We'll just start. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I've just started. Why not? We're here. Why not just start? And today, I can't lift it up and show you. Today, I bought a wire. My computer's no longer wireless for this link. I'm hoping that might help with a little bit of the dropouts and stuff like that happens. Although, look, I think Ian's already dropped out. Is that me? Are you still there, Bruce?
I'm still here. Are you still there?
Oh, that's good. I think I'm still here. Still. Looks to me like Ian's gone already. Phil Hunter, hello, how are you? Bruce just asked me before I started. I shared a link to a thing that happened in the UK today, a parliamentary thing, and it was first titled Domestic Drone Opportunity. And that's what this committee was going to discuss. And guess what they changed the name to? In fact, here we are. He's the man. Hello. Hey, it's summer. You're not supposed to have your jacket on in the shed.
It's freaking freezing. It's raining. It's cold. The weather has turned to a temporary winter, at least this week.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not on. Oh, look, a bit like James Stanthorpe. Oh, James, yes, James, I can bring you in if you want to speak to what your person spoke to. I'll put it in this very word in the chat. There you are, James. I was just mentioning the parliamentary committee, Ian, which I'm sure I hope this Ian as well. We should speak to it. And I was just going to say to Bruce, they changed the name from Domestic Drone Opportunity to Domestic Threat of Drones.
That's typical.
And that's what it was changed to at the last minute. And good day, Mike Vision and Richard. Richard Parker was there, but he's currently stuck in his office. But hopefully we'll get him on next week. Richard Parker spoke very well, I thought. But I don't know. Ian, have you got any thoughts on what occurred today in Parliament?
Well, I've only watched some of it because, I was at work, earning a living, as I should be. But I've had a watch the TV because someone was kind enough to record it for me. But the live broadcast, actually, they cut it off before the end, and then you have to go to the parliamentary website to see the rest. My main thought, and I think it's shame on the UK drone industry yet again, that it should take Brendan, who's an American, living in America, to come over here and have to point out to the committee about the overcharging with the drone database, even pointing out that if you compare it to the American system, it's 12 times overpriced. And he mentioned it no less than 3 times. It should be people that are supposedly representing the industry in the UK that are saying those kind of things. If an American knows these are the issues, we know the issues are here. So it's just really disappointing that people, when they get the opportunity to speak to the powers that be, seemingly let us down. That was the big thing for me. I mean, all credit to him for raising the issue. I mean, we all know, as we've discussed before, the anger that's on the various groups. And what we always get here is people saying, oh, it's only 16 quid. It doesn't matter what it is. That Pifco, they can go up another 100 quid. And people go, oh, just pass it on to the client. Oh, just pass it on to the client. Nothing ever matters. And one day, it will be eroded to the point where big players like Amazon are buying up the airspace. And those people that have always said, oh, it doesn't matter, pass it on to the client, they'll be the first people that will be crying on Facebook. Mark my word.
Crying on Facebook. Talking of
what
crying
a dystopian future you paint, Ian.
I know. In his jacket, he's not in his shed in the garden. He's made this. You won't see it, Bruce, on Facebook. He's made this very fancy garden, and what that is, I actually now believe to be, is a Thunderbirds-esque island hideaway, and he's actually underground, underneath his garden, in his shelter.
I thought that was a British sauna.
What, the Thunderbirds?
No, the room is in, British sauna. It's even with the steam, it's still cold.
Could very well be. Yeah, could very well be. But what time is it for Bruce Blue Fire? I think it's about 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And Bruce, sometime in the morning o'clock for you.
9 in the morning.
9, is it? 9 it wasn't that far out, was it? I mean, it wasn't that far out. James, do you want to? What should we make you duty ARPAS man tonight? What role do you wish to take?
I don't mind whatever role you'd like me to take, within reason. But yeah, I've got to admit, I haven't actually seen this parliamentary thing. So I kind of watched the first 15 minutes and thought, oh, let's see how far I am through it. And then it was barely reading on the scale. So I think I'd watched about 5% of it. So yeah, I'm going to have a look a little bit later. But yeah, it certainly looked like there was some interesting debates anyway. They're talking about allowing clubs to become the operator. So you're going to end up having the likes of BMFA, RPAS, FPV UK, etc., becoming the legal, the responsible operator.
But
so
no, I suggested that in the video that would be the way around this.
Richard must have told him.
Well, that it certainly is. But then, like, if you look at it in that way, like where who's the pilot is still going to have to pay, because if you've got like these organizations as being the operator, then they become legally responsible. They're going to have insurance. They're going to have extra resources in place to do this. So I don't think you're going to avoid the charges, but maybe that way we'll be using more efficient databases. But whether that's going to help us in the long term or not, I don't know.
Yeah, but
the BMFA's got insurance anyway, so not a big change for them. They're already insured, and the members, because they don't need to register as an operator, they don't have to pay their £16.50, do they?
No, exactly. But they may have to go and pay BMFA a little bit extra, because they're obviously going to have to manage that process a bit more, because now they're legally responsible.
Yeah, but there's a thing with that as well. So at what point does the BFMA start going, hold on a minute, we're not happy with all of the comeback, because all that comeback's going to go to them at the end of the day. The second someone is pulled over in the middle of a street who's flying in a council estate and he says, well, hold on a minute, I'm a member of the I'm a member of them, it's going to land on their door. So I don't see how that solves the problems, because at the end of the day, you're just shifting who they're going to deal with from the operator now right back to them, and it's going to put a whole host of paperwork on their door. So I don't see it solves anything.
It's going to be like the situation in Canada, though, where you're in other countries where you're only covered by that if you're flying at approved sites. So, like in if you're in Australia and the registration comes in, you won't be covered if you're flying in some park unless it's a CASA approved flying area. So that's the way they can differentiate that and keep things under control. Yeah,
they'll have their terms and conditions apply. They've already got their very comprehensive manuals and books when you join the BMFA. I'm very pro BMFA, I must say, and I think I wouldn't mind. Somehow, it wouldn't hurt so much to me if it was a couple of quid more to the BMFA to run it than to give it to another company, the full 16 quid 50. Who I don't know, trust and love, and have not been with me my whole life. But then if the BMFA and FPV UK and all the others do end up being the main people, and we don't pay our full 16.50, who's going to pay for everyone else? Because that's what 60,000 people. Not of the. I've already forgotten the number. Was it 100,000? How many people was it going to be?
170,000 they were planning on. I think it was. So
that's a shortfall of 120,000.
Well, that's all right. That'll work. That'll be okay, won't it?
So what you're going to find is it's going to be the commercial operators and hobbyist drone pilots who are going to pay, basically. So you could probably expect the fee to go up quite considerably compared to what it was before. And this is why I was sort of saying beforehand, when all the commercial drone pilots were moaning about it, it was like, maybe just think about this logically. If likes of BMFA aren't going to pay, then who is going to pay? It's going to be commercial drone operators, because I can't see. The problem I see is if RPAS do that, well, how can we actually control drone pilots? How can we control our operators? We can't, because they're operating everywhere. We don't have sites where they come to fly like BMFA and FPV UK do. So it becomes a lot harder to manage for an organisation like RPAS.
The other issue with that is that the BFMA are not going to be paying 16 quid ahead. So it's more than a shortfall of 100 or 1,000. From a financial point of view, it's going to be disastrous for them if they do that, because they're going to get absolutely no money in at all. You know,
Hooray!
you know.
It's
So the one person that registers their recreational drone will pay $2.8 million.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Because let's face it, largely, if you're in the UK, it's a good idea to be in FPV UK or the BMFA anyway. You probably are in it. If it's halfway sensible, you'll be in it anyway. And those people that aren't in those groups are probably never going to register anyway.
Yeah, and I don't see. I don't think that this will come to fruition, because this is what it started off. The talk even 6 months ago was this exact same thing with the CAA, or Department for Transport. It was proposed, at the outset, that this is the way it should be. That they've already got the databases, and there shouldn't be need for their members to register separately. So it's just really repeating what should have. The conversations that have already been happened and been dismissed in the past. So if anything, it's a U-turn. But yeah, I don't think it's going to get paid for either way with it. There is going to be a shortfall because everyone's knocked off. Just in principle, I think partly just knowing that it's such a huge amount of money and disproportionate for what they were trying to achieve. And I guess it's just the fact as well, when in the other consultations we've had in the past, it suggested it'll be a bit cheaper, and obviously the fact that internationally it's disproportionately large as well.
And I should welcome Louis. We haven't seen Louis for a while. Are you back in Portugal? Portugal.
Yes, back in Portugal, and just in time to you guys complain again of the UK regulation.
You've been away, and
you guys forgot that you guys forgot that you're still in EU. And today there was the publication of the new rules. So and then you have 1 year to make it go into UK law. So guys, forget this. This is just a passing thing about UK guys. So. Next, any news?
Is there any Gatwick news? I know Louis likes that.
Yeah, he does like Gatwick, doesn't he? Yeah. No, I don't think there's been any more Gatwick news. There was that little bit of Heathrow news which went away while you were away, Louis.
Oh my God! I saw lots of airports. So don't worry.
But what
on all those airports?
But what was pulled in and mentioned in Parliament today was the requirement with those EU laws, so thanks for setting it up, for remote ID and geofencing for everything over 250 grams.
Yes.
And
so cool. Come on, the manufacturers are going to have a field day with that. Come on, all your Mavics, all your Phantoms are going to get obsolete, and they have to sell new ones. What else could they want?
Yeah, but DJI don't sell drones anymore. They don't. They've decided to get out of the business, haven't they? They've just got into these trucks. They sell trucks now. They've given up.
I haven't seen the announcement officially yet, so whatever, doesn't matter. But come on, guys. If you're a manufacturer, cool, all new business, all over again.
EU CE marks on everything, isn't it? That's going to be interesting. What
CE marks? The Community European marks or the China export marks?
Well,
both exist, and both are very similar. So which one is the China exports? Are you already on the payroll, Gary?
No, I'm not. You're going. Are you going next week to China? Aren't you going? When are you going to China?
Let's see if I can go, because getting a visa is proving to be, well, as challenging as understanding the drone regulations all over the world.
Yeah, pretty hard to get to here. I don't know what you have to do in Portugal, but I have to travel to Joburg to get one here, and it's all a bit of a pain in the backside, really.
Yeah, and having been almost 1 month away, it hasn't proved exactly beneficial to get to the consulate and get that thing going. So I have 2 days to handle all that. Cool.
And David Davis is mentioning the Here link in the comments. Why are you mentioning Here link, David? Maybe you want to tell us in the comments what you want to talk about, because Ian's here, and Ian's can answer anything. Either one of them, between them, can answer any question.
What's a Here link?
Beta 2 is
Is it
the 2 launched on it last week. 2 now.
Oh, he must be using a Here link. That's why he's broken up.
Oh no, he's using my normal link, I think. Ian there, who has support basically, has tested one. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's using it.
Oh
yeah, right now. Yeah, it's on hotel Wi-Fi, so not.
Ian, are you on bad Wi-Fi or something? Because normally your video's all right, but you're breaking up really badly now.
He's on Here link. Come on, Ian.
Well, actually, the other Ian, you were with Mr. Rouse himself last week. Instead of being here, you were off down the pub. So, what did you hear any more news of new products from Mr. Rouse?
I do, but I am sworn to secrecy. But yes, he got to see the delights of Bradford City Centre on a Tuesday. So, having been around the entire world, I'm sure that's going to be the highlight of his international offering.
You should have a good time, Ian.
Yeah.
Off. I don't know if that's any better. I'm on hotel Wi-Fi. Sorry.
Oh, okay, that's why.
It is a little bit better. Heard some guys said they got 16 kilometers in CE mode. Is that CE?
Yeah, that's Ian here because that's
the guys here. Yeah.
Which CE with 25 milliwatts? Come on, guys, give me a break.
He's done it. Ian here has actually done it. He's got the video on it. It's on YouTube. He's done it.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah.
Blew me away.
I've seen an elephant dancing tango on YouTube and still don't believe it. Come on.
Well, is that Ian's very credible. He's done it. He's done the test and thumbs up.
Yeah,
to it.
that's why his Wi-Fi is breaking up.
That's his hotel. That's hotels for you.
Yeah, I've been in hotels this last month. Don't worry. No, come on. I really don't know. Physics is a bitch. 25
but Laura, it's very possible. It's very, very possible indeed.
Yeah, come on. How many years ago did we have shortwave radios that would pick up radio signals coming from South Africa, from New Zealand?
You have to connect those to a power station to make that work like that.
Oh, come on. And we could do that all that remote thing via shortwave. That was on the time that we had those small Sony shortwave radios, the ICFs.
ICF 2001 or 2010, yeah. 2010.
So, are we going back to that or to some crazy technology? Come on. I've had my share of experiences that with very high-powered 433 megahertz radios, duly certified, and everybody with all the right permissions, failing at 200, 300 meters. So it's a bit hard for me to. But theoretically, it's possible. Okay, but we don't live in the theoretical world. We live in the real world.
Luckily, we got Bruce here, and he's
Bruce is the living proof. Bruce is the living proof because even when he flies around his park and we get all that interference on analog video from his FPV goggles, one can only imagine the effects of the powers that he's using. I'm sure he's using only the 25 milliwatts because he's a responsible and sensible gentleman. And so
Well, actually, Louis, a lot of the time, I just put a white cane on the front of the plane and fly by braille, and then you don't need any power. It's much easier.
yes, and we still were expecting the hydrogen thing, but that's something else. Come on, Bruce.
But Gary's right. It's all about antennas. You can have the fanciest bit of hardware, transmitter and receiver. If your antennas are crap, you're only going to get 200 meters with lots of power on 433.
See, yeah, come on. The same setup that I'm mentioning, the 433 flew 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, and one beautiful day, sunny, it couldn't go beyond 500 meters. Why?
Yeah, noise
Why?
floor. Depends what else is on the band. 433 is a very narrow piece of spectrum for RC use, and it's very easy to find it very noisy, and it varies immensely from one day to the other. And it also depends. So it depends where you're flying, and it depends what else is operating. It's when you're flying for reliable communications, you want a narrow frequency range because you get a better signal to noise ratio. But then sometimes you actually want like 2.4, you've got 84 odd megahertz to deal with. So even if part of the band is really noisy, there's always a bit that'll get through. It is a difficult situation to deal with. You can't get consistency in long range because there are so many factors, but the best way to mitigate those is really good aerials.
So when a manufacturer comes up and claims that he has the super duper new technology that heals old world hunger, the refugee problem, and the border with Mexico, all on the same technology. I'm concerned about those claims. So yeah, it might work.
Unless they're claiming that unless they claim they're going to cure all known diseases and bring peace and happiness to the world, I wouldn't believe them.
Yeah. I forgot to cure all diseases and the world hunger. Yes, but something else that I just glanced, and you might know something more, Bruce, is that war that is been going on with FR Sky and the Jumper guys. What's happening? What's happening on that world?
Well, Free Sky, we'll call it FR Sky or Free Sky, depending on how long you've been associated with the products. They have had quite a change in the structure. They were a small group of people, engineers, building really cool stuff and focused on the customer and delivering great value. Now they've become very large. I think they're publicly owned in China now. So there is a lot more control by bean counters and marketers, and they have moved away from the initial vision, and they're now all about bottom line. So although FreeSky was founded on building compatible equipment, they made Futaba compatible receivers and so forth, and they used S-Bus in their technology. So they borrowed a lot from other companies. Now that other companies are borrowing from them, they are getting very upset about it. So it's a bit of hypocrisy. It's like, how dare you copy our stuff? And so there's been a war between FreeSky and TBS, because TBS developed the long-range 900 megahertz using LoRa chips, and FreeSky copied it. Well, they didn't copy it, but they were inspired by it, which meant that there was a little battle between those two providers. And now, when another company has come out and been inspired by FreeSky's transmitters and built a compatible transmitter, FreeSky is saying, do as we say, not as we do. How dare you be inspired by our products? It's a commercial battle more than a technological one, and it's a battle that nobody can win, because the best way for any company to maintain their lead or establish a lead in the market is to produce really good products at a really good price and support them. If you focus on that, you will win. If you focus on court battles and slagging your competitors and trying to introduce technological barriers to competition, you will ultimately fail.
So, but I think it even involves the open source project, OpenTX. So things are quite confusing, right?
Yeah, FreeSky have hired one of the OpenTX developers to work full time on the product for them. So it's still open, but there are bits that are perhaps not so open as other bits. But, you know, I don't mind. I mean, there's plenty of other radios use OpenTX, and because it's open source, you can do what you like with it. There's a lot of grey areas here, and there's no clear thing. But ultimately, FreeSky needs to get back to its knitting and start focusing on better products, because this latest protocol I brought out, Access, even they have admitted that they bought it out to squash competition. People that were producing FreeSky compatible equipment using the old protocol, well, they won't be able to do it now because the new one has encryption and it won't be as easy to reverse engineer. So they're claiming this benefits to the user. Oh yes, you've got 32 channels instead of 16. My goodness, I use the maximum of 7 or 8. So what do I need another 16 channels for? And it's going to give you a little bit more range and a little bit less latency, but most people, it completely doesn't matter to them. So, but they did have a statement which said, this is actually to squash the competition. That's, at least they're honest about it, but it's still, again, they're focusing on themselves, not on the customer. The customer didn't ask for this. The customer asks for good value products that are reliable and easy to use. They've shifted away from that. The new transmitter they brought out, the X9 Lite, it originally came out with no backwards compatibility because they wanted to get people off the protocols that could be cloned by their competitors. And so, yeah, the bean counters are in control and they're making some really bad decisions, in my humble opinion.
Well,
I think that opens up quite an interesting debate, though, when you start talking about open source versus closed source, because I think we're kind of seeing this in the autopilot world. Sort of DJI have gone down the Apple route of the drone world, and you kind of got the 3D robotics, ArduPilot kind of route, which I see as the Android of the drone market. And what we haven't really seen yet is the Android take off. It was always within the phone market. The iPhone had a clear lead to begin with, but then Android sort of caught up. But we haven't quite seen that yet. And I'm quite interested to see where this is going to go, and when we're going to get that breakthrough from the open source route to sort of give a valid competitor to the sort of proprietary sort of DJI type technology.
It depends on which sector you're looking at.
Yeah, I was going to say, which one of us is going to go first?
Everybody all at once, really. If you're looking at the commercial drone market, yeah, you're right. But if you're looking at the recreational model flying and drone market, then the open source has basically taken over. Every man and his dog's using FreeSky with OpenTX or something with OpenTX on it now. And there's a few people hold out and they use Futaba with its proprietary thing or whatever. But most people have embraced the open software because of the benefits it delivers them. But in the commercial sector, no, the same thing hasn't happened because people want to buy off-the-shelf stuff that has a lot of custom support. And the open source software is community supported, which isn't always as reliable or trustworthy as a vendor providing support specifically for the product they make and keep behind their little closed wall garden.
Well,
Sorry, but what's happened there? Because if you look at Android phones are very well supported. You've got there's quite a difference between the Android model and what we see as the sort of 3D robotics sort of ArduPilot model. And what do you think needs to happen to go and see us progress from, ArduPilot or what it's called now, the Cube, to the Android type model where you do have that kind of support in place?
Okay.
Well, let's just
two things. First, ArduPilot is not the Cube. Cube is hardware, so take it off the equation. ArduPilot still strives and has been adopted by many companies that are using it not as a big retail on big retail vehicles, but mostly on very specialized industrial vehicles. So one of the big strengths of ArduPilot is its versatility, and that provides the companies that want to adopt ArduPilot a very stable platform because it is also very heavily tested. That is one point. The other point is that we are seeing now a more diverse ecosystem of boards where ArduPilot can run, not only the Cube, but a lot of other manufacturers that are selling boards on which you can run ArduPilot. That is the market of either DIY or the industrial market. Those are two completely different markets that you won't see anytime soon. No one getting over the guys of DJI, because DJI is the Apple and has taken over a big advance. Okay, you have other companies that are providing industrial vehicles and they are based on other open source projects like Unique, which is using the PX4 stack, but their market penetration is not the same as DJI. So either on the consumer level market, so ready to run, the only experience, and apparently the guys that did it came up okay because they sold millions of those vehicles, was the tiny Skyrocket, which is a very interesting vehicle for $100 and something, and it was using ArduPilot inside, and it was announced even on the box, so it became a cult vehicle. But no, the problem is not having enough companies which are looking at the consumer level market. It's a very heavy market. 3D Robotics proved that it was not easy when we tried to go face-to-face a couple of years ago with DJI, and came out bad. Even GoPro, that was not using ArduPilot, was using another flight stack.
Yeah.
Came out as we know it. So mostly it's not the flight stack itself; it's things around and not related to the flight stack. At the moment,
let me jump in there. The Hero DJI, they did use an open source project to start with. They allegedly, but what they did, their genius was putting it into there's one there, isn't it? Putting it into a thing that the wife would probably let be on the kitchen table or in the living room. The white shell was what caused their rise to fame, not the flight stack they were using, because so yes, now they have 3,000.
They made it simple. They made it simple, and
absolutely.
And it's something that's on my part on ArduPilot. That's something that I'm always fighting about, is getting things simpler. We are already over 1,000 parameters, which is mind-boggling. So even I sometimes I have to have 2 web pages open, one with the parameter descriptions. Sometimes we have problems with documentation, so I have to go to the source code and check up whatever the damn parameter does, trying to understand the code. Fortunately, the code is readable, but that requires some knowledge of the code, so it's not something that I would recommend someone to do.
Do you know what my thoughts are regarding this? So I kind of asked the question in trying to see if I could get the answer, but this is my own opinion on this. So if you look at the Android and the iPhone, you had the iTunes Store and you had the Google Play Store, which opened, and it was those stores that really created the innovation. It was the applications. And so where I see it going with the drone market is you're going to go and get to a point where you essentially have an application marketplace where you can start developing applications within a common standard with common, a common sort of framework to sort of start building your applications with sort of an SDK. Now, I think some of them are already going that way. You look at DJI, they've got SDKs available to start developing your own applications within. And I think the ArduPilot is going to start going the same way eventually.
ArduPilot there first, to be fair. DJI's copied ArduPilot there. It's had effectively Mavlink and other protocols to be able to interact. So that obviously you've got like there's Tower, Mission Planner. All that's essentially using SDK type technology. So that is already there. I think Louis. 3DR actually were going the right approach, and they were making ArduPilot accessible. I think that was probably down to the likes of Colin Gwynn for the approach, in that when you're within ArduPilot, everything's numbers, it's figures, it's you're looking up on the wiki and working out what they mean, where he turned it all, like the DJI products, into sliders. So it would be, you just say speed and you drag it along with your finger from, and it was all that. So it was about making it intuitive. So at the moment, ArduPilot has improved over the years. When you went back to the Phantom, to be fair, DJI did well then in the self-builds, because the NASA, you would basically just plug it in, the software was fairly simple. And you didn't have to set all these PIDs and stuff, which you had to do on ArduPilot at the time. It would just take off and it would fly, and you didn't have to do an auto tune. So that's where they got that right. And yeah, I think ArduPilot's been behind in that kind of making it user friendly, and hopefully that'll.
That has not much to do with ArduPilot itself. It has to do with the ground control stations, which are not ArduPilots.
No,
but back in the day, it was OpenPilot that bought the 32 mil, 32, 38, whatever they are, whatever those side boards are. It was OpenPilot that bought the first 32-bit boards out and really ramped up the multi-rotor market, and that became the NASA for people in China who copied it, and apparently, so I've been told. And
no, the NASA was made by a guy in Japan, and the NAS board, sorry, was a guy in Japan.
And it was it's not NASA. NASA,
not NASA.
Referring the NASA, the ones that you
mean NASA copied
a 450 or a 550 and put a NASA controller on that.
All I know for certain is at that time there was a lot of disgruntlement amongst people. As there often is in this industry, and but basically out of that grew the Phantom and the NASA and the Flame Wheel and all that sort of a thing. In fact, Flame Wheel first, and then it was only really at that point that the ArduPilot project started taking notice of multi-rotors. They were a little bit late to the game, basically.
Yeah.
If you
sorry, if I can just make a point quickly and then you jump in after me. I've said it before, and it's just because I love saying this as well, because it winds people up. What's being missed is it's the payload with ArduPilot. We need ArduGimbal. We need ArduPilot related products that is equally as mature with the software. ArduPilot's always flight controller, and there's no vision outside of all the accessories that need to go on to make a complete drone. If you just want to do a drone,
sorry, Ian, we support the partners that want to integrate their gimbals and their stuff with ArduPilot.
Yeah,
ArduPilot project is focused, so we don't want, because there are not many people, you know that. There are not many people developing and contributing. It is a wide world project, has lots of people chiming in and giving suggestions. But end of the day, the amount of people that really do code is not that much. And we have to be careful not spreading too much, because if we start a project called ArduGimbal, a project called ArduCam, a project called Ardu something, will be very, very thin. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And why I see the market of iPhone versus Android is not the same as here, because in the phone market, you get the phone and that you get added value with apps. On the drone market, you get the drone and hope that some hardware will plug to that drone and will do something. And that is much more difficult to do than the apps story.
You need an app store. A phone's got a camera, a phone's got inertial sensors, a phone's got all of the plugins. A phone is a drone, it just doesn't fly. So you just need an app store.
Tell that to my phone. Sorry, he flies quite often.
But yeah, so does mine actually. Mine flies far more than it should. I think something interesting actually. Louis picked up on it. Ian picked up on it as well. Is that the one thing DJI got right was out the box experience with the NASA, and that is as simple as you can buy a Flame Wheel, put the flight controller on it, in 2 hours have it flying in a way which was decent. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it wouldn't smash itself into the trees by itself. I think as much as I love ArduPilot, the biggest issue with it has always been its out the box setup experience, and that's not the software as you say. It's been Mission Planner, the way Mission Planner has done the setup, and it's a lot better now than it's ever been as well actually. but it still requires a technical level of competence that people have to do quite a lot of learning for out the box.
Yes.
But on the flip side of it, it is much more customizable, far better at larger applications than the NASA ever was. So I think if you look at DJI, for instance, over all of their products, it's always been that out-the-box experience. What they were very good at is making a turnkey solution. And it wasn't always the best solution, but it was.
Let's just run back to James's. Let's run back to that app store. That's over there. Let's just run back there. So when the first few apps, the mapping apps, for instance, that came out, they did support ArduPilot back in the day. Your Precision Hawks, your Drone Deploy, your this, that, the other. And they've gradually moved away from it. And now they've put all their eggs in one DJI-shaped basket. Now, what happens if this, and I should have learnt it from last week, what happens if this supposed restriction on Chinese products, various, that's working?
DJI Terra? You're meaning DJI Terra?
No. The US military and providers of data to critical infrastructure projects are moving through the House in America a bill that will destroy that market for DJI and other vehicles. No, it will.
I've been in the last 2 weeks in US, spoke with a lot of operators. No, it won't. Sorry. That's wishful thinking. That's wishful thinking. And come on, we have to be real. The commercial / industrial market in US is quite vivid, is quite how should I say it, quite entrenched with the easiness of the DJI products, where you buy a product, you get the box, you take let's say M600 or M210 out of the box, and you're flying in 5 minutes. That's the stupidest experience of user friendliness you can ever get on a drone. The problem of ArduPilot, and that's where our partners of ArduPilot are trying to come up, is to provide a similar experience. Some of them are very close to that on industrial vehicles. Not quite there yet, but very close, because, for instance, I've seen implementations of the ground control station, and that's the big point. How well can a ground control station, which acts as a user interface to the ArduPilot, can mask all those 1,100 parameters that ArduPilot has? And if I've seen implementations, take it, for instance, the submarine guys, because ArduPilot also does submarines. So instead of something that is wrong, let's go and dive. The guys that are an ArduPilot partner and sell ArduSub, which basically is the variant of ArduPilot that does submarines, have gone further than the rest and picked up Q-Ground Control, twisted Q-Ground Control, which is very easy to do. And with their product, they provide a customized version of Q-Ground Control. And their users are fine and satisfied with that experience, because they customize the interface to what their users need. So no longer does plane, rover, omnicopter, tricopter, quadcopter, dodecacopter, whatever, it does ArduSub, and it does it well. So that's what we need to do, is to have a very good out-of-the-box experience. And their users are happy. But the drone market is very hard, because let's take, for instance, DJI versus Parrot. Parrot has a wonderful product, but their the commercial power of DJI is just too much. We all remember when 3D Robotics launched the Solo, And what DJI did, they launched a new Phantom for $200 or $300 less. That would do just a little bit more.
Oh no! It definitely didn't do anywhere near more. The Solo was actually a really good product. The software was really good. It made the ArduPilot experience really. I mean, it did what you needed to do. In that, it was all focused around the camera, the gimbal, and it did it very well. And I know it cost them a lot of money developing all that gimbal code and the hardware behind it. But it's funny actually. If 3DI was still there now, they'd have a fantastic opportunity, especially if
3DR is still a thing.
Oh, yes,
there's no mapping solutions for DJI.
The point was, though, there's still thousands of Solos being used by the US government. They've even got a stockpile of them because they've got them for specific tasks, and they would have liked to have kept on using them. So they're keeping them going for as long as they can keep them going. But the point was, if 3D robotics was still there, if Trump continues on with his trade war, which is effectively what it is with China, a trade war where he's using tariffs as a means, basically of having these political battles, there would definitely have been an opportunity there. But obviously, that's one they can't utilize because they decided to shut down all the because they were making a profit from doing the. All the models based around ArduPilot, all your stuff like your Iris, and they had stuff that was more like specialized commercial products, but they closed all that down and put all their eggs in one basket. As you say, I mean, Parrot's getting some of that benefit now, but their products are still fairly consumer-esque, so they're always going to be. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to replace DJI because no one offers the functionality and ease. So I think unless it comes down to something's really sensitive security-wise, then DJI will be picked as the go-to product.
You need an app store. You see, you need an app store.
One thing I think is
you need to be able to buy a piece of hardware, and if you want to fix a gimbal to it, you download the gimbal app. If you want to fix ADS-B to it, you download the ADS-B app. If you want to use a certain type of mission control, you download that mission control app. All an app store basically does is it standardizes the inputs and outputs from the system. So like create that boundary as to what inputs and outputs can go into the machine, and then create an SDK which basically allows people to develop apps within those bounds. And then you can start developing on top of that, because the problem is at the moment, whenever you want to interface anything with the device, it's always a case-by-case integration. It's clunky.
You can also plug one of these, which is what we call a companion computer on an ArduPilot drone. This one is quite powerful. It's not a Raspberry Pi, but you can do it with a Raspberry Pi. It's a nice 7 small board computer and do very, very complex things. And that's the issue. So you cannot ever go to an app store like Drone Deploy. You have a Drone Deploy app store, and I don't know if we can sometimes get someone from Drone Deploy here to speak about the numbers and the apps that are being used. But consumers just want something ready to fly that does everything. So they don't want. Well, I'll give you an example. Parrot sells this, and it sells for $2. Some add-ons on their flight control stack. And it is the follow me feature and the mission feature. So out of the box, these want to follow me and want to missions. You go to the App Store, either Android or Apple, and you go and purchase for $2 the follow me, and you purchase for $2 the mission control. That's a step in the right direction, but there's not much else to do.
Yeah, but when I buy my Samsung phone, I go and get a load of crappy apps that I don't want, which are Samsung related apps, which are already pre-installed on my phone. So, but if I want to go and increase the capability of my phone, then I download extra apps to be able to do that. So
Exactly.
every machine will always come with some standardized apps that are pre-installed.
Yes, exactly what Parrot did. They realized that not many people want to do missions. They just want to do selfies. So they didn't have that to the cost of their base cost of their flight controller app that is running on the phone, and just had it as a purchasable option of the app. You cannot see.
Yeah, but if they're only charging $2 for it, then surely they could have amortized that across the whole platform. Would have cost like 1 cent per drone sold. So I don't think price is an issue. Maybe it was to simplify things. But the other thing is, you take your average Phantom 4. People buy it and use it. They don't add anything to it. It comes with everything they need. They don't need apps. It's all on the DJI Go app they've got with their phone.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, what
somebody they want to sell the pictures of the roof of the neighbors. They're selling that for $25.
Yeah, but I mean the drone is what they bought. They bought the whole thing. It's a complete package. It's got a camera. It's got a gimbal. It's got everything it needs. You don't need to add bits to it for the average user of a DJI Phantom. And the thing is, why doesn't someone with ArduPilot create a clone of the DJI Go app so that it becomes just like flying a Phantom? Hide all that crap. Just make it look like a Phantom.
Very slightly. There's an app called Solex. It was initially as the name suggests, it was written for the 3DR Solo to replace the 3DR app, because 3DR obviously said we're only supporting it for a while. So a third-party developer created that, but now you can put your Control Rover. So really, it's become an ArduPilot app now. So there is that there. I think it costs somewhere around about 30 quid. So that puts people off, but it is a single developer doing it. So that's comes with the territory. And if you look at Litchi and Autopilot for the DJI products, they give you extra functionality and they're not too cheap either. So it has got the equivalent. It just hasn't. It's probably not as well known because people are still, being too tight and say, well, I'll just get a mission planner or one of the others that's completely free. And really, they should be thinking there it isn't completely free. They should be doing a donation to the developer, really, but that doesn't happen in reality, unfortunately.
But I'm not talking about something that's functionally equivalent. I'm talking about a clone, something that has all the same buttons in the same places with all. So if you're a DJI owner, you can say, "Oh, I'm going to buy this because it is the same thing. I can use it straight out of the box, and all those thousands of parameters are hidden. They're not necessarily pre-configured by the manufacturer. You just go and press the takeoff button like you do with DJI."
Yes. The closest you have now for the ArduPilot world is QGround Control.
Yeah.
Because QGround Control provides the similar experience. Even the drawing of the missions is very, very similar with what you get on the DJI apps, and even the takeoff, it's just one button. Even the changing of height is just a slider. So it is also an open source project, runs not only as an interface to ArduPilot, but also to PX4. And it's quite capable, and the design goals of QGround Control are more about the user experience, less than the possibility of having every knob available in a GUI. Yes, you can go to twist every knob on the flight controller stack. You just go to full parameter list and welcome to paradise, 1,100 parameters, and have fun. But for instance, I've been working with the developers of QGround Control, and we've came up, for instance, for traditional helicopters, we came up with a very easy solution that you only see what is relevant to set up an helicopter. So you have 10 parameters in a GUI that you just twist and say how your helicopter is assembled. You have the roll and pitch and elevator servo's position. You tell them which one is yours, and off you go. Basically, it is very, very easy to set up, for instance, a traditional helicopter, which is one of the most difficult vehicles to set up. And we wanted to have that out-of-the-box experience for helicopter to be as smooth as possible. That can be done for a regular drone. Yes, it can. It requires some work. We've been, 3-4 months to come up with a solution for helicopter. So I would say more time to because helicopters have 8-10 variations. Traditional helicopters, not speaking on the ornithopters, the dual rotor things. Traditional helicopters, one rotor, one tail blade, and that's it. And it's very easy to come up with a solution. So we went for the easiest of all.
I see you've invoked the gods of ArduPilot as Tom Pittenger's in the comments there, Louis. So careful what you say there. You've obviously said enough. You said Tom 3 times in a row or something, and he appeared. And he's saying Mission Planner is a reference design. It's the bucket that contains all features.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest problems of Mission Planner. It just exposes everything.
Yeah.
So it makes it so hard for a novice to navigate on it, and requires some training and some study of. I like Mission Planner as I like Math Proxy, which is a command line interface for ArduPilot. So there are several options available.
Yeah.
Is there a case for hiding some of the options though in ArduPilot? So I know that there's a lot of accessibility to some of the control sort of algorithms and the tuning parameters, but maybe there is a case to actually hide some of that behind one of your control Gs or whatever it is to go and get into the geotagging feature. Maybe there's also a case for doing that for some of the programming.
Well, if you take Heerlink, for instance, Heerlink's currently Q-Ground Control. As Ian mentioned earlier about Solex, you're also going to have Solex. That, I believe, is the plan that Philip's going to go with it once it's out of beta. And it does begin to give that easier out-of-the-box experience. Q-Ground and the others, because it tends to make things look a lot easier. Hopefully Solex will take that a step further, because whilst it was originally designed for the Solo, it is going to be adapted for the Heerlink. So it means guys will now have a flight controller, a video system, which out the box is somewhat plug and play, and will get them in the air. It's pretty much at the same level you've had from the other manufacturers as well. So I think whilst ArduPilot, or not ArduPilot, it's probably wrong to say ArduPilot, the open source community has been more geared towards people who know mostly what they're doing. They are getting closer to having a solution that fits all. It gives you all of the options if you want it, but it also will give you the very basic setup as well. We're getting closer to it. It's not perfect. As Ian jumps up and down, as I do as well, everyone wants a gimbal. Everyone wants a camera gimbal. Everyone wants a camera gimbal with an M43 sensor on it that I can go and put all my lenses on and plug it in straight away. We all know what we want. We just want it, I don't want full frame. Give me an M43 20 megapixel. Give me equivalent of an X5 or an X5S. And I'll be happy. The volume's enough for that, unfortunately. But overall, we're getting closer to a solution that gives us an out-the-box experience. And Heerlink is part of that as well. And if you take Profi, Philip, they're slowly building products, but they're only one manufacturer as well. Others are doing some fantastic work out there as well. So it's just time. I think it's taken a bit of time for the open source community to catch up to the open box solution, but they're getting there. They are getting there.
Well, I know a startup in the UK who's they're doing SLAM using drones. So they've basically got a drone in a cage, and they're trying to go and get this drone to move around inside buildings, and I don't know, is it called Emescent or something like that in Australia? It's something similar to that, but they're doing it in it's a startup in London, northwest London, near where I live. But really exciting project. But they're using the Cube and ArduPilot for that. But they're having to create their own user interfaces, because a lot of the user interfaces at the moment are a little bit clunky. So I think once the user interfaces are sorted and they've kind of tidied up the code a little bit, I think that will make a big improvement to usability. But one thing that I really want to understand is what happened to the X8, the 3DR X8. That was an absolutely fantastic machine. And I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I was looking at that machine, going to buy one, and they discontinued it. So does anyone know what happened to that?
I mean, they used to build all that in Mexico, and when they came onto the Solo idea, they just closed down the entire plant, which was a shame, because they were. I mean, I remember the X8. That was one thing I was quite keen on as well. I mean, to be honest, you can build that kind of thing, but it was nice that I think just again the fact that it's been put together. They were very good actually with the customer service as well. 3DR, that's one thing they got really well. I mean, that's like one of the things like the Solo. They said we'll give you a flyaway guarantee. You know, it flies away. They would replace it, and they honoured it. So yes, it was a shame. Yeah, that was a decision they made. So all that came to an end, because they had a fixed wing as well, which was there.
I also think they'd have survived today. If they'd have been round today, I think they'd have survived. I think they were, unfortunately, a few years ahead of where they needed to be, in the sense of, with everything that is going on in the world today, there is a bit of a market for them now. And, you know, GoPro didn't help them. Let's be honest, the whole gimbal thing was a bloody mess. And the way once the controls were taken away and all of that mess, if they'd have been able to just survive long enough to develop an in-house camera, today they'd have had a viable business, and probably Parrot are going to reap the benefits of that now. You know.
Yeah, that's right. The one bit they couldn't open source out of Solo was the gimbal code, and the reason for that was it had the proprietary calls to the GoPro camera. So I think there's some sort of NDA or whatever that was signed with GoPro that says basically you can't release that code. So I don't think it will ever make it out, unfortunately.
I think the Solo was a big mistake for me, like clearly, because they put them out of business. But they yeah, but
that was nothing to do with the hardware they decided. It was the fact that they went to market. They went out. I think they manufactured somewhere about 60,000 in one go, and then they jumped straight on and did another 40,000 when they should have waited. And the problem there was the fact that I mean, DJI won't even do this, and they did it. It was a bit daft. They said it's coming out on this date, and they tried to stick to it. There was a bit of a couple of months, I think, delay. Yeah, because the gimbal got delayed, but they even honoured getting the drone out, and they were sending them all out by airmail. So that was costing them a lot in the actual transporting of them out, and they also. They put a lot of requirements on the dealership. You had to buy this 3DR simulator and so on, and that got the backs up of some of the retail channels, understandably. So it was a good product, but it was too much volume. And I mean, the thing that was said was that actually, and we don't know if this is true, but it was the thing that was published, that leaked out from the staff there, that said Frank Wang had actually turned up at the 3DR offices when just after the Solo came out, and offered to buy the company out, probably just to kill off the product. But obviously they turned him down, thinking we could do it. And maybe that even prompted them to think, oh, actually, we should make more of these, because DJI is worried, when really they should have waited. And they only had, the issue came about was because they took a branch that hadn't been released of ArduPilot. So it wasn't fully tested, and they'd done that actually with the Iris, and it had caught them out because a blocker bug got through. So it was a really bad idea to repeat that, but that's exactly what they did. They went and took a development branch, built the code on that, and there was an existing code that did the pre-arm checks on the GPS, and that was taken out. And then this fancier code with an early version of the EKF, which wasn't then proven, was put in instead. So basically what was happening was it was allowed to take off before it had a proper GPS lock. And that resulted in a first few with crashes. Those obviously end up being the YouTube channel with lots of hits. And then there was lots of people trolling it as well because it wasn't a DJI product.
Come on, crashes are a thing of every platform.
Yeah.
Remember the Inspires, the videos of the going out against the garage doors.
Yeah.
And how many did they sell? A bunch.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest issue with 3DR, I think what killed them was the fact they tried to copy DJI. They didn't try to differentiate themselves from what DJI were doing. They basically said, okay, well, let's take the Phantom as a model and let's try and beat it. So while they were developing their Solo and trying to beat the Phantom, DJI were building upon what they already knew worked, and basically then released the new Phantom, which was better than the Solo, and they were able to do it at a cheaper price point.
All they did do was bring out a Phantom with just normal Wi-Fi. They cut features away, but it wasn't better. It took them a year. And in fact, the Solo did a good thing to the market because DJI, to that point, didn't have hardware redundancy. It just didn't happen. And that was all in the Solo. And then I think it was a Phantom 4 that came out afterwards. When that came out, they then introduced the redundancy. So you had backup IMUs, which you not had to that point. Backup compasses. I mean, that was the reason of all the Phantom flyways. It was the compass unit. So if you didn't do your compass dance every time, that got either magnetized, whatever. You would end up going off in the wrong direction. And that's actually still a problem with unless they've recently corrected it with the PX4, and that only will deal with the compass still, which is why I won't buy a unique, and then why I didn't buy the GoPro as well, because I'm used to RG Pilot giving that level of redundancy in the software and the hardware, and then that's what DJI copied. But it did do the entire drone market good then, because it showed you can have a consumer product with redundancy built in with multiple sensors. And sorry for talking over you there, James. Sir.
No, that's all right. Well, for me as a commercial operator at that point, I was looking at what was out there in the commercial market, and DJI were offering a bunch of Phantoms, which were all quad rotors, and the critical component at that point was, well, people were saying, well, quad rotors isn't good enough for redundancy. You need more than 4 rotors. And so all of our commercial aircraft were all built with either 6 or 8 rotors, every single one of them. And I think where they went wrong is that they had the X8, which actually provided that. They could have probably charged £8,000 to £10,000 for an upgrade to that X8 if they had a stable platform with redundancy that was mature and reliable and could carry some form of DSLR type camera. That they would have had a product there. Like Intel, or back then was Ascending Technologies, was selling a Falcon 8 for 28 grand. And if 3DR had been able to undercut them for 10 or 12 grand and provide a multi-rotor, more than 4 rotor aircraft, which could carry a DSLR camera, they would have been in there. And they already had that with the X8. The X8, I was looking at that as a cheaper alternative to a Falcon, and then they cut it. And I was kind of, as a commercial operator, I was like, they've missed a trick here. If they'd have gone for a 12 grand aircraft, which was an upgrade to the X8, I think they'd have had our money.
I think, Solo's a complex issue because 3DR and Solo, because number one, they probably should have delayed the aircraft. They should never have released it with that plastic camera holder, because unfortunately what that meant was every time you were comparing it to footage of other stabilized drones, it looked terrible. Now, it wasn't apples for apples. However, when you're in a media war, people don't see that. People look at one bit of footage that looks crap and one bit of footage that looks good. I think GoPro screwed them, quite frankly, to put it bluntly. I think they totally did them over, and they just never recovered from those two things. By the time the gimbal came out, it was something like 2.5 months, if I recall, Ian. It was a long time. They should have just delayed. And the funny thing is, we're used to it now. If someone come out now and said we're delaying for 3 months, we don't batter an eyelid anymore. You got all these bloody these crowdfunded things that never materialize, let alone anything else. But they pushed themselves to deliver the aircraft too early.
Well, talking about GoPro, don't you think it's slightly ironic they called their aircraft the Karma?
Yep.
Seeing as what happened with their DJI bringing out their version of the GoPro, after DJI basically ended up not being able to use the GoPro camera because GoPro basically stripped it away from them, and then they built the Karma, which flopped. And then DJI came out and basically copied the GoPro, and eventually they got their Karma.
I think we got to remember the GoPro were the all-pervasive we will rule the world, one camera to rule them all, and they were just cocky. They were cocky as all anything, and they didn't actually have the smarts to back it up.
And the problem with GoPro is they did nothing for 4 versions. Hero 3, 4, 5 are virtually identical cameras. They are literally identical. I think the interesting thing with this camera thing is this: GoPro have everything to lose. DJI, this is a play in the park for them. This is a side project which they can do whatever they want with. GoPro are in serious trouble now of this, because one camera out as well, I think in a week or two, which is virtually the same spec as the Hero 7 Black and the DJI one as well, and I think that's $200. And whilst they're not going to sell like DJI or GoPro, why would you? If you didn't care about brand, that's where you'd put your money. That's where you'd put your money straight away. So yeah, GoPro were very cocky. It was hard to get away from the way they went about the whole Karma thing. They literally stood up and tried to say we're king of the hill from the beginning.
I think they must have internal management issues to some degree as well. I think there must be some sort of hierarchy or this is how it goes kind of mentality, because they don't seem to listen to customers. And one thing that 3DI were very good at, and DJI are good at it these days, is actually being out there on Facebook and Twitter and interacting with customers and getting the feedback and working out what the gripes are and reacting to those. GoPro just seems, it's always our way or the highway. It's like for years, people going, we don't want a bloody fisheye lens. We want lenses that we can replace to put on our drones. And they wouldn't let you do it. So you've got like Backbone in Canada that you do the rib cage replacement kits, and there's a whole market. In fact, here we go. I've got one right here with the replacement lens on, so that I could get decent footage out of it. But you shouldn't have to go to all that faff. So there's just that total arrogance. And then when they closed down the development team in France that were doing the 360 stuff for the Fusion, the customers were quite rightly saying, and I was amongst them, it's like, what is going on? Are you covering this functionality with a team somewhere else? And they just went totally radio silent. And this was just before the Christmas period as well. So lots of people just didn't buy, thinking, well, is this an end-of-line product? Turned out it wasn't end-of-line. They did gradually transfer those skills to the US. But because they hadn't told anybody, that product's now down. So it's been discounted in the US to $299. So it was actually a good product. But I don't think that would have sold as many because of the way they reacted with their customer base. And also with the, as mentioned, with the Solo, and they did it to the entire drone community because they thought we'd bring camera out. They took off the Hero port so you couldn't interact with it. They've then not given out the specs so anyone could interact it with the Bluetooth. So they've essentially made it so you can't put a GoPro on the drone. Now they're not building a drone. They've essentially boxed themselves out of an entire market. So you can only use it as an action camera. And to me, again, that was short-sighted. Even with the, especially back then when the Solo was flying, when they brought the Hero 5, they would have had their tens of thousands of upgrade sales just from that market. And that might not be a lot of numbers in their entire market, but to really say, well, we're going to just cut off these entire markets and we'll be fine. It is arrogant, and I still think that they've got that kind of mindset about them where, you know, we know the market better than our own customers, and frankly, we don't.
Well, look at this. Every GoPro today should be compatible with I2C, Mavlink, or CAN bus for control. They would open a huge market,
That's
a
it.
massive market, if they just gave you basic control over one of those three protocols. That's all they'd have to do, because they'd gain all the FPV guys to give them a lot more option. And yes, they do use them a lot now, but to have full control of the camera would be a massive benefit. Massive.
And the problem is that these days, if you want to go in industry, you have to go basically to Sony cameras, and you get Sony consumer level cameras that have lots of deficiencies, and people get around those deficiencies, and no one even blinks an eye through a GoPro. GoPro, you just cannot get. For instance, you get this for the price of a GoPro. So why go to a GoPro?
It's a very good point.
Yeah, and by the way, the images on this are much better than the GoPro. So, yeah. So GoPro, yes, I have it. I paid dearly for it. Yeah, someone wants to buy almost new GoPro. Yeah, that's it.
It's been a funny old industry for a while. We're not even talking 10 years for all this.
No.
Are we? What's about 6 years or something like that?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's something, for instance, we speak about, and even inside Autopilots, there's a love relationship, because it was probably the most successful commercial products that Autopilot had. I don't know if the Skyrocket might have sold more units, but yes, there's a good love. But let's face it.
There it is.
Let's face it. How old is the Solo? Ian.
You know what would be full circle though, if DJI made the Osmo where it was pluggable into a Phantom 5. If they created a Phantom 5 with a gimbal where you could literally just plug the Osmo into it, and you could also plug it into one of them gimbal sticks as well, then that would literally be full circle then.
Inside Autopilot, we've had some crazy proposals, for instance, to sponsor the hacking of the DJI protocol, so that we could use at least the DJI gimbals and cameras. But that's not the way that a conscious project would work.
I think the gimbal thing will be a problem of the past before very long. Well, I won't say any more than that. Bruce, which camera are you holding up? In the comments we were asked earlier by Dronebeard, what's the best 700mm frame? And then Bruce, what is that camera you are holding up? And will you be able to find it in the grass?
No, you won't. It's the new RunCam 5, which is a bit like, physically it's compatible with the Session, but it doesn't have all the features and bells and whistles, certainly not of the Session 5, but it's a $99 camera. And, you know, if you want a cheap Session form factor compatible 4K camera, well, so far it's looking pretty good, actually.
Is there any HDMI on that, Bruce? Out?
No, it's got. I'm not sure that the documentation is so often with these Chinese products is pretty thin on the ground. There's things in here that aren't documented at all. It has a USB output, and they do have. I've seen them with a standard SD video composite out through the USB connector. So there's no HDMI, unfortunately. It is specifically for the hobbyist market, I think, and it's $99. You know, I mean, if it was a $200 camera, you'd grizzle, but for $99, it is what it is.
Because that's actually one of the big problems people are now coming across with Healing, for instance, is that there are actually only GoPro provides a proper HDMI output on these small cameras. Very little else does at this stage in time. So it is another area that we need to see development on, as well as we see more digital transmission systems. We're going to need to see proper digital outputs on these cameras too.
Yes, you can get those cameras. You're not willing to pay what they cost. That's the problem. You want something for cheap? No, you won't get it. Sorry. You want something that has all those outputs? Go and try the Blackmagic cameras. as an option.
Yeah, but not for FPV.
I don't like the price, but yeah, they are there. They exist. They have Mavlink control, and but adding all those interfaces that you were mentioning and all those control protocols, it's not an inexpensive stuff. It's very costly. There's a lot of development going around those specialized cameras. And yes, get a Blackmagic.
One thing I was going to say, the one thing I hope for GoPro is I actually hope Sony would swallow them. I don't think it will ever happen, but I do think Sony could be at some point the only real thing that could save GoPro in the end. Sony is just a brand that could hopefully keep it going. But
they've had a few misfires, though, haven't
Yes.
they? What was that camera that was just the body thing that we all got very excited about for a while? Everyone got very excited about those, didn't they?
I think actually Backbone does a rib cage for those as well. The problem with that, I think it was just 1080p, and when we're in a world of 4K and you've now got Panasonic's coming out at 6K and you can go higher up and you can get 8K. That the 1080p was already outdated when it came out, so it was nice for the fact. I mean, there's been a few compact ones because Blackmagic did one as well, and they even had a cheek to do a photo of the Blackmagic on a Phantom, and it turned out that really it was above the payload weight for liftoff. But yeah, there have been a few small ones where everyone's thought, great, we've got a high quality camera and it's compact enough to use, and it hasn't really panned out.
Oh, here we go. Is that flipping robot getting scrolled around? Is it me? I'm not doing it. There's me. I'm there now.
Have you seen that? There's been apparently a leak from DJI about their new RoboMaster S1 robot they're looking at bringing out.
Now, unlike Arduino, who can do submarines, cars, helicopters, this, that, DJI are only just beginning to play with their second type of platform.
Well, they're not actually.
They've been around a while. They've been around a while, those.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of the equation, the handheld gimbals.
No, this is.
And I've seen Phantoms underwater.
Gimbals like crazy, by the way.
Who's going to keep going after that? That was a hummus, as they say locally.
Okay, everyone and their dog can do RC car, unless you put some smarts on it.
Well, this has got a lot of smarts by the sounds.
Looks like a STEM project.
It's got computer vision. You can Python code it, which suggests to me that it's got OpenCV, because that's image recognition, which is written in Python. So
No. It must have blockchain and AI.
Bruce Chain. That's a Bruce Chain. And the comments from
on the RoboMasters, I think if you look on Twitter, I'm one of the first people to have spotted that trademark, and it was back in 2015 when they put the trademark out for that. So I don't know why it's taken them quite slow to come to market. I think probably they're a bit worried about, is there really a market for a rover? It's quite a specialised product area at the moment, but I think that I still think there is a market there, but it's something where I think you'd have to integrate it with your action cameras.
Well, what they're trying to do is
ecosystem.
They're trying to, I think, target education. So I think there is a big market actually for education. You've seen it with drones, like the small little drones with like shrouds on the outside for kids. And I kind of support that kind of industry, because I think we do need to go and get young people into programming, because I think in the Western world, especially in the UK, programming is sort of seen as a very geeky kind of sort of exercise. I think in America, it's not quite so much. I say that, and he brings in a massive, I don't even know what that is.
Well, wasn't the Tello supposed to be something like that though?
Yeah, Tello uses a blocks-based language.
Drone blocks. You got
the Scratch language, and it is very, very, very interesting product for kids. But as usual, kids look at that for 5 minutes, the most curious ones for 10, and then back to something else.
Oh no, I can look now. I've even been doing it today. I'd go and do.
Okay, it's 7 minutes. Sorry.
No. No, it's up to the educator to make sure that they're doing something that interests them. If you just hand them a thing and let them get on with it, they'll get bored pretty quick, like you say. But if you have, race them or whatever and whatever impossible tasks.
Lego tried to do something, didn't they?
You got Lego Mindstorm.
Yeah.
Successful. The Lego Robotic Challenge or
Lego League. I entered the school today for this year's coming one, which is a city-based one, and it's
it'll be. I had a Cosmo. I have a Cosmo, the little robot. I haven't got him with me, and my kids do love it, but it is one of those things, as you said, it's down to the teacher because they can't do it on their own. It uses drone blocks. No, not drone blocks. It's not Sketch either. I can't remember which one it uses. But haven't they gone under? Hasn't Anki? It was Anki, I think they were. Haven't they now gone out of business? Which is interesting as well, because you have appears to be one thing appearing and another thing disappearing as well. So
I don't know. And in the UAV shed, IBM were giving away 1,500 telos for education for this. Yeah, for the very reason.
What is it with kids today? I mean, when I was a kid, we had a box of Meccano with just straps of metal with bolts and screws, and that kept me busy for months just trying to work out how to put screws on nuts and build bridges and cranes and things. These days, you go to Meccano, and it's all like a little kit set, like a Tamiya. Everything is
in France now.
It's
made in France. That's what it's about.
Yeah. We're pushing people into a mold, pushing kids into a mold. How much imagination can you use when the more complex the technology, the less number of ways you can put it together, basically. It becomes very, very specialized. I think all kids should have a Meccano set and nothing else.
We need to invent
software now, isn't it? It's not hardware has become obsolete. Hardware is gone. Once you've got a bit of hardware which moves wheels and lifts up a crane, like that's as much as you can do with the hardware. But nowadays it's all software.
No, have a look at First Lego League and have a look at some of the contraptions that children create, and then it's not just that we'll look out and get on my high horse. It's not just the contraptions that they make. It's they have to do a little group of them will be so. All right, I'll take my lot. The music department is creating music. They have march on songs. They have songs and chants and all these very American things which don't really fit very well. But they're composing some music for it. The art department is making the backing for the set, where we tell the story of how they created it, and then they have to show their code and they have to show their thinking. There's an awful lot more to it. But one of the things that has horrified me in this sort of teaching gig is, but it won't horrify Bruce because he won't care. He wants Meccano. Is the number of children that have never played with Lego, and that just blows my mind.
Meccano forever.
Oh, there's Meccano. Oh, he's got Meccano. Oh, look, there you go, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce.
Okay, build a crane out of that, Louis.
Oh my God! It was a pain in us to put this guy together.
Well, that's that. What's his name? James May. Did you see his Meccano crane that all fell apart and all that sort of a thing? And then, of course, he used RG Pilot in the glider that went across to Lundy. But anyway, that's another story altogether. We die.
Gary, just to jump in on the rover topic, I do think it is quite an untapped market, actually.
Yeah, it is. It is.
People that are probably outside of video won't see it so much as well because we've got drones now, and we haven't really got quite motion control in the sky. But it's along the way that with drones you can do repeatable shots and so on. It's a very big thing with the ground cameras, and you have to pay quite a lot of money. It's like Edel Connor getting into, I think I've pronounced the name right. They're doing like a small device, and it's on the desktop. And again, it's about the software and it's the app. For being able to do time lapse circle round products, being able to program and move from A to B, repeat it over again. Again, if you're doing that with green screen, you can do quite a lot of tricks. So there's a big market there for having rovers with a gimbal on it, where you've got the functionality you had like on the Solar, where you can do A to B. You can say this is your subject of interest. and have that as repeatable moves. So there's definitely video use cases that are completely untapped. 360 video again. It's very impractical to get really good footage without sticking one on a rover. So I think there's plenty of use cases there that could actually be tapped, and a lot cheaper, because if you go into the video devices, your cheapest you're getting something, and it's considerably crapper than a rover, is around about 800 quid.
Come
I
on,
think it's the response
sorry.
to the regulation.
With Lego.
I'm with Bruce. I'm with Bruce. I'm with what Bruce.
Yeah,
you say it again,
It's a
Bruce.
response to all this regulation, because DJI realizes that drones are going to be such a pain in the ass to actually use,
Yes.
as everything has to be registered and things. They still need a market. They still see the value of mobile video. They still will see people wanting to take pictures from unusual perspectives and in places they might not be able to go themselves. What better than a land-based vehicle for doing that? Will we have a marine version of this as well? Because these things are not yet regulated, but how long before you have to get a license, register it, and have a driver's license and things for these movers? I mean, the politicians are not going to sit still and go, "Damn, we've been gazumped. Let's make some more rules."
The marine one is a very interesting use case, because the sailors, and Bruce knows a lot of them, are getting very worried about autonomous boats. And I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago that the first autonomous cargo was delivered from the UK to Belgium, I think it was, by autonomous boat. I think they are the next one in line for, perhaps, I suppose, autonomous cars must be further down the line, but certainly a group of people getting very upset are sailors.
No. As a former marine engineer that sailed on cargo ships and passenger ships for many years, anything that can help us on that, it is welcome. The trouble is knowing the reality of commercial ships and cargo ships. We are a long, long way from that happening, but a long way from that happening. The amount of things that go wrong is mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, actually, talking about people moaning, I've heard that there is a BALPA, and I think Ian, you told me this as well. There's a BALPA letter kicking about saying, if you do see anything, and that's British Airline Pilots Association, if you do see anything in the air, don't say plastic bag, UFO, or whatever. Make sure you use the word drone. And we've got to track it down. So just in case there's a friendly BALPA person watching this,
it's been policy for some time now. I heard that about probably, almost a year ago, that the policy was if you can't identify it as anything else, it's definitely a drone.
Yeah, but I think they put it in writing. I think they put it in writing to all their members. Well, so I've been told. I think you told me as well, didn't you, Ian?
Sure. No, not me.
Not you. Oh well.
I would very much like to see that letter, though. So if someone's got
exactly. So please do that. No, I think there is a market for rovers. And look at the Honda quad bikes. It might not be Honda, but one of the manufacturers of quad bikes. The next one is autonomous, and that would be so useful here. Trailer down the bottom, wood on the back, up the top, back down again. It would be so useful.
Months ago, there was a video of Valentino Rossi teaching a Yamaha bike to ride solo, and that bike did quite well in the end. Quite a few behind Valentino, but
will these ground-based vehicles be allowed to be operated beyond visual line of sight, though?
No, it's always be on line of sight. A motorcycle on a circuit, it's always on line of sight.
Just pulling you up on that last comment. Basically, I don't know if you've heard, but RPAS UK have been asked by Steve Forward, who's the director of the AirProx board, and basically we've been asked to organise an event to try and help communicate the AirProx reporting process and to help improve the reporting, what information is captured during that process, because I think that within the drone community at the moment there is a lot of skepticism as to what is being reported. Like when you hear of these reports at 18,000 feet of a drone coming in contact with a manned aircraft, I think a lot of people are very skeptical about that data. Rightly or wrongly, like I think it's possible that drones can get up to that height. And if you go on YouTube, you can see videos of drones going up to that height. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but when you start looking at the statistics, there are a lot of questions that remain to be seen. But Steve Forward, he's the director of the Airprox board, and he has basically come to RPAS and said, look, we understand that there are some questions here, and we want to ensure that there's clear transparency in the reporting process. And we also want to ensure that we have the best process that is possible for Airprox reporting. So what we're going to do is organize an event that is open to the whole drone community and manned aviation, bring the two communities together, and hopefully try and improve the process and improve the clarity of that reporting process. Because at the moment,
now last week I mispronounced Simon Dale's surname. I called him Simon Wilkinson, and I meant to apologise at the beginning. Now he's on a plane on the way back from Japan right now. Only me goes no exotic, and he will hopefully be on next week. So maybe you need to come on as well, James, because I'm sure you saw Simon's most excellent website dealing with this Airprox issue.
I think it was good to see the opposite side of the coin. I think there is probably a middle ground, which is probably where the truth lies. I think Simon's perspective on things probably isn't completely accurate, and I probably believe that the current reports aren't completely accurate either. I think there is a middle ground there to be had.
Simon's not trying to debunk everything. I mean, one of the panel he uses is the next Tornado pilot, so it is not just drone but general aviation expertise that's debunking these Airproxes, or at least say this is what it could have been. I think it's pointing out the reality or likelihood rather than, you know. So I think he's gone about it in a way where I think he's tried to be fair rather than be, no, it's definitely not a drone.
But then again, my concern with this is, are they trying to highlight it to make sure there's more reports? Or because at the end of the day, okay, we have a situation where most Airprox reports come from manned aviation saying it's a drone. You know, it's very rare we actually get a drone report go in with a drone failure. Most of the reports are issues where manned aviation say they've seen something at 30,000 feet or whatever. The only concern you have with this is, are we looking to get more accurate data or more data? Because they are two different things as well, aren't they?
So I think not necessarily either of those two. I think it's more transparency over what that data actually means. Because at the moment we've got all this data coming out, and a lot of news organizations are taking that and they're saying, okay, well, look, there's all of these drones coming into conflict with manned aircraft. I think what we need to see is actually, okay, this is what's being reported, but this is what the actual data actually means. It means that there are pilots reporting this, but that doesn't necessarily give us confidence that that is exactly what the state of play is. So what we're looking to do is to create more transparency as to what that data means, as well as trying to improve that reporting process so we can try and understand what's reliable data and what's unreliable. Because at the moment that's not clear. And I think, you know, I think we do need to understand as a community that the CAA requirements for safety is 0 deaths, 0 injuries. You know, it's basically 0 tolerance. So that's what the CAA are trying to achieve. But what we need is good data, because if we're basing regulatory decisions on poor data, then we're going to get poor regulations at the end of the day.
Well, sorry, I'm jumping on you, James, but that also leaps. Look at the time. Anyway, it also leaps to the thing. Of course, it's Uber Elevate. Just started in America yesterday. And what happens on the day it opens? A helicopter flies into the top of a skyscraper in New York. and you say safety and all that. It's very sadly, it seems it was a fire chief. It seems like seems like there was a mechanical problem from the get-go, and as soon as you're out of water, you're in trouble. But that's led to New York saying, well, you know, we did say no helicopters, and I think we really, really are going to mean no helicopters. So why did I want to say that, James? I want to say that because can the CAA really, do they really think that we're the same sort of beast and must be held to the same accountabilities? And are we really that dangerous?
Well, what we have to be careful of is we can say that drones are really safe and they're not going to cause any issues, but at some point within the next 20 odd years, there will be a fatality from a drone. And so I don't want to be that person who's saying that drones are super safe and then it kills, you know, 350 people in a commercial airliner. So I think there is a balance there. I think if you're going to go and turn around and say drones are completely safe, I think you're wrong. I think there are risks involved, but it's a case of getting accurate data that reflects the real risk and not having data that might be skewed for various reasons.
Well, let's before Bruce has his say, because Bruce has his say. Shall we call the modern drone world the year 2009 to make the maths easy for me? And now it's 2019. It's 10 years. We haven't had the fatality and whatever, and the numbers. The FAA said last week that ARP has outnumber manned aircraft 5-1, or was it 4-1? Anyway, it's more than double. Is that not enough data?
Yeah, but I was going to say, just hold on. People die on their way to work every morning in cars. People die in aircraft every week. You know, no one is saying drones are safe. However, the risk compared to everything else out there is minuscule. If we're going to go down the road of it's all going to change when someone dies, well, hold on a minute. People die in cars every single day, yet we haven't banned them. So,
including the autonomous ones.
Yes.
remember, risk is also about frequency. So, with cars driving on the road, cars are driving every day. There's hundreds of thousands of cars out there, millions.
We've got a handful of autonomous cars, and we've already had a death.
Oh.
Yes.
But look at what the pushback was when that Uber incident happened. Look what happened worldwide. There was huge news reports. There was all this regulatory pushback. Do we want to be in that same situation where we end up with regulators getting on our backs because
we already are. Yeah.
We are in that situation.
We're already suffering.
I'm with James because the number of kilometers that autonomous cars have done is just a small, very, very small drop in the ocean of the number of kilometers or miles that the other cars, the manned cars, have done. So it's just a part of the risk, and you have to take the risk as it is. So you don't have to be blind to the fact that autonomous anything has been in use for so little time, and we have to be careful embracing the autonomy.
Yeah, I think that's why drones, to a degree, I mean, have the safety record, is because you generally can't operate them fully autonomously. You've still got to be there on the controller, on the sticks, ready to take over. Where, although they've got the drivers in the autonomous cars, I think if a car's driving along, you are going to be a bit more blasé about it. I think, wasn't there something with that Uber one where he was watching a movie on his
Tinder.
phone?
He was on Tinder.
Right.
If we're talking autonomous, I want to know how many people have been killed by free flight model aircraft?
Free flights? I don't know.
I don't know, but we go to Old Warden and get your helmet on when they check them. But,
I think it's unrealistic for the CAA to have a target of 0 deaths, because there's no other activity in the history of mankind that has produced a 0 death outcome. Eating food kills you, coughing, tripping on a paving stone. We are extremely lucky that we've had no deaths. And there will be a death eventually, but as others have said, risk is probability times consequence. The probability we've proven over 10 years is very, very small, and the consequence is also, compared to manned aviation, very small. So the risk is incredibly small. It's proven. And I think what we have to realize, in fact, I'm waiting for someone to die, because at the moment, no, seriously, from a mathematical perspective, I'm sitting here all day just waiting for the first death. Because at the moment, with no deaths, we cannot do a statistical comparison between drone operations and anything else that's caused the death, because we get a divide by 0 error, because there isn't a 1 to give us a base point. So as soon as somebody dies, we can then say, well, we're 10,000 times safer than manned aviation, 10,000 times safer than this, that, and the other. But at the moment, no.
We can do that with RC models, though. Plenty of people have been killed by RC models, by the helicopters and by gliders. So now we can drag them into the loops, not quite divide by 0. And I'm also thinking this is close enough, but while I'm on also back on my high horse, I'm thinking this 0 deaths is too easy. Everybody wants that. That's too easy a motto for your company, really. That's what everybody wants for everything and whatever you're doing. So they've got to think a little bit harder about, I think better science.
Well, Gary, there's a gross hypocrisy in this as well, because you've got the Boeing aircraft where that was that's total SDLC failure. That's business as usual, common sense with software products. They're saying rush to market. Well, if you're rushing something to market, the thing that always gets squeezed is the testing, because the testing's the cycle at the end after development. So we've allowed that to take place with manned aviation. So it says actually there is hypocrisy. If you're a big player with a lot of money, you seem to get away without so much scrutiny, especially considering they had one crash and then it's had to take a second. And then they say, oh, we've got a software patch. Well, it's a bit late to be telling us that after a bleeding second one's taken place.
Well, what about the other thing that happened in the grown-up aviation world this week, the ADS-B outage? There's remote ID, save the world and all this. And there goes Rockwell Collins with an update to the WAS GPSs. It doesn't work. And then that's aircraft, 400 aircraft grounded because they're getting spurious messages from their systems and kept below 28,000 feet.
Rewinding a little bit. Let's not forget that safety isn't the only risk with regards to drones. I think the biggest risk that governments are worried about is to do with security and privacy. That's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about safety. We're talking about security and privacy. That is the key. They're the key risks which regulation is trying to solve. So I think when we start going on the whole bandwagon of drones haven't killed anyone, they haven't injured anyone, that's not what government are worried about. They're worried about they're telling us it's all about safety.
They're regulating it as if it's about safety. If it is about privacy and security, then tell us that. Don't lie to us. Don't perpetuate a fraud on the public because you want to do one thing but you're going to put it in the different clothing so that people will accept it. No, if you're serious about security and privacy, make regulations that deal with security and privacy, not ones that pretend to be about safety.
Also, it's slightly it's almost a ignorant kind of concern in that it's not understanding the full technology, because a drone doesn't have the degree of privacy concerns that people think it has, because the majority of your consumer drones are flying with a wide-angle lens. The flight time is still, in relative terms to all other technology, very short. Again, the fact that we can't fly in every kinds of weather, so it's not like you're hovering a drone over somebody's house for days. And also, people think of we've got zoom lenses on, and it's like I'm trying to think of the Will
any TV series. Pick a TV series where zoom into that image.
Go to the DJI page and buy the Z30, and you can have all the fun that you want.
You're talking about products that, again, are at the higher end of the DJI product range. done for commercial. I mean, even your Mavic with the zoom is still, you know, most of your hobbyists are still wanting the higher quality 4K footage, and it's about capturing, you know, your sunsets and so on and so forth. They're not practical spying tools, especially because you've got the noise that your multi-rotor makes. You know it's there. You hear it before you see it usually. So you can actually do a lot more spying with your mobile phone, your SLR. You've got SLRs you can buy, consumer ones, where you can zoom in on the moon and see a really clear image. There genuinely is.
If you your moon neighbor that pretty that you want to zoom in on her?
I don't do any zooming in on any neighbors.
So the new astronauts will have to no ducking around the back of the lunar lander for a pee, because there'll be people on the ground with Nikon P1000s peeking at them.
Yeah, but so, I mean, the whole thing around privacy is, if you look at all the way, people put photos of themselves up all the time. People even, you don't care about their own privacy, and that you wouldn't be on Facebook if you did, frankly. So that there is a degree of hypocrisy about the whole thing, and the fact that it is an overblown fear. I mean, there's some good YouTube channels where, you know, there have been some drone videos that have shown, you know, this is what something looks like from, you know, 25 meters, 50 meters, and so on. And just seeing how tiny people are. I mean, usually to get someone and see the face clearly, you know, you're going to be 5-10 meters away. Otherwise, you know, you're just a figure within a scene.
And where's all the outcry about dash cams? I mean, so many cars now got dash cams, right, for insurance purposes. And every time the car goes past, you're being filmed, you're on video, high definition sometimes, you know. And what happens to that footage, you don't know. And what about CCTV? In the UK, you can't sneeze without being on a half a dozen CCTV cameras, and you trust the state to protect that information. Yet we find in some countries they're building facial recognition databases, not telling anybody. So I think the whole drone privacy and security thing is, as Ian says, way overblown. It's just an excuse.
I'd also
what it's not about is it's not about necessarily what people are doing, it's what they're capable of doing. And at the moment, we're not seeing attacks with drones as often as they could be happening. I think we saw in Venezuela sort of probably 6 months ago or something that someone went and strapped a bomb to a drone and flew it towards the president of Venezuela. Now that is from a government perspective, that's the kind of threat that they're worried about, I think, more than necessarily the safety perspective. Obviously safety of aircraft is a big concern, but I think what we need to understand is what these machines are capable of.
Look, we've had the for 17 years. I built my cruise missile in 2002. 17 years ago, and I alerted the powers of the world to the fact that this is technology that's in the hands of the public. Anyone with half a brain can do this now. It's been 17 years. There's not been one case where an unmanned aerial vehicle has been used against a civilian target in the Western world. I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened. And now we're dealing with little drones are getting smaller and smaller. I don't think that 250 grams of Semtex is anywhere near as effective as some martyr with 25 kilograms of C4 and ball bearings wrapped around his chest who's prepared to move on to the land of virgins in order to make a name for himself.
Sorry, Bruce.
There we are. There. This video absolutely buried on YouTube. Thanks, Bruce. Top job. Thanks very much. Thanks, mate.
We're going down and forth today.
Hang on, there's someone knocking at my door already. It's just, we've nearly been going 2 hours. Sorry, Ian, you go ahead.
Just a quick one. There's a serious point, though, to the point there in that the New York Times, donkeys years ago, did an article. I think it was the first one I saw on the subject that speculated about the fact that, you know, you could weaponize a consumer drone. And frankly, in the Western world, we haven't seen that. There's been cases in Syria and Iraq, but it comes back to the argument. If I have here a drone and here I have some hand grenades in my hand, what's the bigger issue there? The fact that I can get hold of hand grenades or the fact I can get hold of a drone? It's the fact that I can get hold of the payload. So that would be your core issue that you would need to tackle. because equally as much, I could make an IED out of that. You could throw it out of a car. You could hijack a helicopter and drop it out. So this whole idea that you're putting it onto a Phantom and dropping it.
I'm going to say one thing on this, and I'm not going to say anything controversial. Don't worry, Gary. We are being treated as guilty before it has bhappened. There is a film about this. I think, is it that Tom Cruise film where they go after people before they've committed the crime? I can't remember what one it is. But the reality is we are being treated as guilty before anything has happened. As Ian said, you can't stop someone doing something if they've had access to something. But the whole issue is here, they are so shit scared of something happening, they're going to regulate us to hell and back to stop it. And they can't stop it. You can't stop a bad person doing a bad thing. And you shouldn't force regulation on an industry because you're concerned that will happen. Because they've...
So should we not have any laws or regulations regarding sort of nuclear bombs or anything like that then?
Yeah, but I can't get access to a bloody nuclear bomb, can I? Well, unless I can. I haven't tried looking actually. But
exactly, isn't that the point though? Like, if you can't get access to nukes, then surely that stops you from doing massive harm to people. Now, granted, like drones can't do that much harm, but
well, look, I think to move swiftly off this topic, I think it's
because we start getting too many ideas.
But it can be. Look, at the end of the day, I think it rounds up nicely. And because look, we've nearly gone 2 hours. The Parliament thing today changed from, and it was something like domestic drone opportunity was the name of that meeting, and they changed it just in the last couple of days to domestic threat of drones. So I think that speaks to James's concerns, and it wraps that bit up very nicely, gentlemen.
Can I just name one more subject?
Surely.
So it's probably going on for another 30 minutes or so. But last week there was I don't know if you heard of the catapult, the Connected Places catapult. So it used to be transport systems and connected places, or not connected places, like something about cities, connected cities or something like that. But they merged together to create the Connected Places catapult. Last week they had an event which was talking about UTM developments. So this is probably quite relevant for next week, and so maybe a bit of a precursor, a bit of a cliffhanger for next week's meeting. But basically, they've announced the new plans for the UTM development in the UK, and so they've talked about UTM core and UTM services as being separate activities, and UTM core being made up of several components, including registration being one of them. And a flight database, a flight plan database being another. And so this UTM core is kind of in development at the moment, and several companies were involved in this. So you had who was it? Department for Transport were funding this. You had Thales involved, you had Altitude Angel involved, you had NATS involved. You had quite a lot of other big companies, so Boeing and Airbus, I think, were in attendance as well. So there's some quite big companies involved in this project, but it's a massive project in the UK, and they've basically drafted out a structure and a sort of systems engineering approach to how UTM in the UK is going to be developed. But at the moment, what we're looking at is a UTM core component and a UTM services component. So I'll leave that on a cliffhanger maybe for next week to have further discussions.
Well, because hopefully Simon and Richard will be here next week as well. We'll get you back as well, because then you'll have 3 people at least to tear apart. But it all this talk, my mind ever just sweeps back to is chucking gliders off hills when I was 12 or 13 and mucking about, and how that's all going away. That's always where my head goes back as this ever rolls out. And I think it's,
you rigs say you have to be 16 now, mate, or will be.
Yeah, I know. So
Well,
on this,
just be glad that you're not in Canada. Have you seen the new regulations in Canada?
you played me when here last week.
Yeah, under 250 grams, you can do anything you like in Canada. It's bloody brilliant, mate. Beyond visual line of sight, 10,000 feet, anything you like if it's under 250 grams.
Look, now, 3 minutes to the second hour. Oops. Has anyone else seen anything else this week that they would like to rant about?
And
Go ahead, Bruce.
Rant under 3 minutes.
I did just very quickly. Alan was Alan Yu. What's his name? Yeah, he was on here last week. In his blog today, very interesting. He pointed out that the test, the theory test that they give all drone operators now, there's no study guide for it, but apparently one of the questions is the answer is only found in a third-party publication that costs you $30. So unless you're willing to buy this guide, you can't get all the answers to the questions from any other source. So it's a money spinner. It's like someone said, "Hey, I'll give you this, list of questions. You write a book, and we'll split the difference." I don't know. It's terrible. Go and watch his blog. It's really important.
So chest puffing for SES News. We were on ASTM F38, one of the standards committees in America, and that's exactly what they did. If you wanted to have a look at those standards, you had to buy. Oh, was it? I hope it was the right one I just said. It was one of them. I think it was that one. And Patrick and I were on the first calls for it. And then as soon as they said they're charging for it, we said, no, we don't want anything to do with this. If you can't develop standards and then make people look at what you're considering. I think it was $75 for each one. And there's one for batteries, one for servos, one for this, one for that.
Yes,
and, yeah,
that's the usual. When you want to buy the original of an ISO, do you think they're free? They're not free. You have to pay for them, and it's not $75. I can assure you, it's quite more than that. So, what else is new? Next,
the other thing I noticed, there's a video on YouTube showing you how to get your DJI Spark under 250 grams by taking bits off and bits of plastic and things. That's going to be interesting because if DJI watched it, they could cut the cost by leaving off half the bits and still sell it under 250. Sell a sub 250 gram quad with some pretty impressive capabilities.
Very much, very much. I'm sure that's Christmas. Everyone's saying Phantom 5, Inspire 19, Inspire 3, or whatever it is. I'm sure their Christmas 2019 drone is a sub 250, very capable thing. I can't see it being anything other than that. And on that bombshell, that's a great time to finish. Anyone else have anything else? Going once, going twice. Dear viewers, thank you very much. Where have you been in the world? Somehow we dragged it out to 2 hours. And I had some intrusory sort of people at the gate. There was enemy was at the gate, but that's all been sorted out. And well, see you again, 2100 GMT next Tuesday, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye. Wind the mouse.